Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's lunchtime webinar, which is the final webinar in our series of 4. Today, we're going to be focusing on the importance of personal development throughout your career and how this can help you in your job seeking. We're joined today by 2 fantastic speakers who will introduce themselves shortly. But before they do, I'd just like to mention a couple of things. And one, the most important of which is that we really do encourage you to be interactive throughout the session. So if you have any burning questions you'd like to ask our speakers, please do pop those questions into the Q&A function, which you should see on the function bar at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try our best to answer either as we go along or certainly at the end. The webinar will last for 30 minutes and will be recorded. So if you have any friends or colleagues who were unfortunately unable to join us today, please do pass the word that the webinar and the whole series will be available on our website for people to catch up with in due course. But without further ado, if we could have the next slide, I'd like to introduce our fantastic speakers today. We've got Toby and Darren, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves respectively. But thank you both for joining us today, and welcome.
Thank you, Lisa. That's very kind, and it's a great pleasure to be here. My name, as it says on the screen there, is Toby Barnard. I was a schoolie in the Royal Navy, and then when I left after 12 years, I went to join IBM. And then became an associate partner, became a director at EY after that, Ernst & Young, so a lot of core consultancy, and I'm currently the managing director for UK Public Sector at QA. And the aim really of that slide is not just to say how great I am, but actually to show you that this conversation about lifelong learning is absolutely something that I preach as well. So from doing my MVQ level 4 in the Navy through to submitting my PhD application to UCL earlier this year as well. Darren, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Group Captain Darren Moss. I'm currently head through life development in MOD, and as with Toby's, this slide isn't to show anything other than the fact that the importance of through life development, and we'll come back to the point of you don't just collect your qualifications, they've got to be relevant and worthwhile to you. In terms of my history, I've been involved in through life development through the whole of my career. I was in the Air Force responsible for delivery of the Air Force apprenticeship program, as well as doing the initial accreditation review of junior officer training and Airman's Command Squadron promotion courses as well. And then as a group captain, I was DACOS training in air, looking at accreditation of all our training to civilian standards. And in my current role in MOD, I'm responsible for all 3 services, apprenticeship programs, accreditation of ongoing training, and most relevant to today, I lead the Career Transition Partnership, which is a mechanism by which we transition about 16,000 service leavers a year into predominantly civilian employment, but also a higher education and retirement. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you both very much. So that without further ado, we'll get straight stuck into the main body of the content of today's webinar and talking about why personal development is so important.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, absolutely. So it really is. And if you want to get on in the career that you go on to after the military, regardless of what it actually is, there's a few key things that I wanted to recommend, really looking from the outside back into the military. So first of all, personal development is important because actually it can be found everywhere. As I'm sure most people know, certainly when I was in the military, the training there was absolutely fantastic. And everything had a purpose as well, which I didn't probably realize until a bit later on. But training can be everywhere. So the old learning model of 70-20-10, where it breaks it down into kind of informal, formal, and social as well. There are all sorts of experiences that you can get learning throughout your time, whether it's looking at your line managers and seeing how they act, whether they're good or bad managers, and learning from them, to actually doing formal courses and qualifications as well. And it's also important, I think, that you self-reflect on the learning that you're doing, and you kind of make sure that it aligns to where you want to get to as well, rather than just kind of randomly collecting badges. The second point is that job markets are competitive out there. We're into this period now of a lot more a lot less movement in the marketplace. However, for those people that are in the marketplace, 7.5 million people, or about 18% of adults, lack the essential digital skills that are needed for a workplace. And this is a big problem in the UK. It's affecting GDP, and it's basically because actually people aren't doing some of the core digital skills courses such as AI, machine learning, data analysis, cyber, and so on. And the reason for this typically is that either there isn't the interest at schools, or actually people then as a second career probably don't think that they're actually clever enough. And there's a few myths as well, like it's just full of rooms of guys in hoodies doing stuff like that, and it's not a place that actually women quite often would love to go to. But the reality is actually that that's not the case at all. And you'll find that there's some great role models in those areas and some fascinating careers. And actually, even if it's not something that you studied at school, you'll probably find that you've got a great propensity for it. And we'll come on to competency-based assessments later on, I think, when Darren's talking about one of his elements. A lot of organisations now, because there is less movement in the market, are looking at skills-based rather than role-based organisations. So that's very much around people collecting skills and having experiences and being much broader in the roles that they want to do. And as military people, you'll already have a fantastic skills base. And I remember as a schoolie down at 3 Commando Brigade, lots of people used to come into my office and say, all I can do is run around and shoot stuff. And actually, when you break it down, there are so many skills that you already have that really translate well into the civilian life, such as project management skills, leadership skills, general day-to-day management of all sorts of things, working in harsh environments. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So think about those skills that you've got, but also think of it as badge collecting. The more you have, the more employable you are. Learning also enables a growth mindset as well. So there's lots of studies that say that actually continuing to your personal development is really important for your greater self. It gives you a much better perspective, although you'll probably have a lot of that already, but it can continue to do that when you come into the civilian world. It gives you much more resilience as well in the workplace, because you're more likely to understand the problems and be able to solve those problems. It can give you the ability to have greater understanding of the problems and other people's perspectives, and help you with that problem solving and leadership. So do consider it as something that is beneficial as opposed to just a box ticking exercise. And then the final point on here is very much around the fact that a lot of studies have shown that collaboration and continuous learning are really, really important, and quite often the things that are missing in businesses today. So the collaboration part is very much working outside of silos. So when you do get into jobs, you quite often find that you'll be in different departments, and people will work in those. And as military people, we tend to be very good at going out and having conversations and networking and meeting new people, finding common ground. And I'd say that that's one of the skills that you should definitely rely on, and you should get out there, collaborate as much as you can, and continue that learning. And there's a reference to this later on about your network as well. Next slide, please. And then from the marketplace, there's some important things to notice here as well. So you don't just have to go into defence roles. So typically a lot of military people would go into roles with some of the defence primes like BAE or so on. You don't have to at all. And actually what we're finding now is that these defence primes are competing for you against people like Amazon and Google, which is quite an eye-opener, and it definitely has a dent in their recruitment. So think about the sort of company that you want to go into. You don't have to just follow a traditional path, but absolutely, if you want to, there are plenty of jobs in there for you as well. There's a lot of talk about reskilling and upskilling in the marketplace at the moment. So it's about making yourself indispensable. And recently we're working with Sky, where they didn't need dish installers anymore because it's all done through Wi-Fi. But rather than make these people redundant, what they wanted to do was then reskill them as data analysts. And again, that comes down to the fact that they may not have done it at school or college, but actually, if they've got the propensity for it through a competency-based assessment, actually they can be a massive asset to the company. And that's when it comes back to that skills versus role-based, which I mentioned earlier on. And that's really what a lot of organisations are looking for now, lots of skills, rather than just having one skill in one role. I mentioned competency-based recruitment. There's a huge range of companies that are doing that now, from sort of Accenture to Microsoft. And actually, they're less interested in the formal CVs. What they're more interested in is you taking a test to find out what competencies you've got, so that you can then be moved into a particular position in the company based on that. There's lots of companies now that are not so worried about, whether you went to university, whether you've got a degree, and actually they're really breaking down barriers as well. And so you don't have that kind of elitism as well, which I think is really, really important. And then you should also think about funded learning options as well, if you do want to consider getting other qualifications. And we'll cover that a bit later on, but the Department for Education runs some fantastic boot camps, which also result in a job. These boot camps are free through the Department for Education, and they cover a whole range of different services and different subjects. And there's also a back to work program of activity as well through DWP, which cover off lots of different subjects as well. So you can go in there and do that training for free. And although it doesn't give you a qualification, it does give you a taster into those different careers. And if you do want to find out more, there is a really good market report on labour through the CIPD, which you can download for free at that link. And actually that'll give you a bit of an insight into some of the stuff that we're talking about today, but also some of the areas of the market where they really need skills. Darren, is there anything that you wanted to add in there at all?
No, I think I'd fully endorse what you've said. If we could just have the next slide, please. Just to reinforce what Toby has been saying, the importance of sort of selling yourself and having your portfolio up to date and have your L&D in place. What I thought was I'd just take a few minutes to talk through the market for service leavers. Soft skills are often seen as just as important as the hard skills. What do I mean by that? COVID was our friend. You don't hear that phrase very often, but what employers did see was it's the soft skills that military people bring. It's they take fewer days sick. They are good at working with direction and problem solving. They have leadership and management skills that are taught through every stage of your career. It doesn't matter whether you are a junior NCO, senior NCO, junior officer, senior officer. We have all those career interventions that you just don't get in civilian life. That's important because we've been working with employers. We've been working with employees as MOD and as part of the CTP to make sure that they understand that. So if you go through the CTP Employer Engagement Programme, there's 9,000 companies registered. There's actually about 3,000 to 4,000 companies actively engaged every quarter who are specifically looking for service leavers. So the jobs that are advertised through the CTP for service leavers, because of the skills that you have, both actual skills and soft skills that don't appear on the DWP or any of the other websites. There are often dedicated teams in those companies for service leavers and veterans. So make sure that you make prospective employers aware that you have served or you are serving, because it's a different employment route. Because one of the things that does affect service leaver employment is not necessarily getting through that first stage and getting your CV read. So it doesn't matter whether you're going into the automotive centre, going to companies like Jaguar Land Rover, wanting to get into IT in Microsoft, or some of the finance sectors like Deloitte, JP Morgan, etc. If they know that you are a service leaver or a veteran, they will put you through a different recruitment channel, and that massively changes your ability to get through to the interview stage, because once we get our people through to the interview stage, military people typically do very well. So those dedicated teams for service leavers and veterans are really key, and that's at all levels. Armed Forces personnel, as I said, are seen as some of the most valuable employers, and therefore they are looking for you. So that comes out when we look at the industry sectors. So on the left-hand side of that table, that's the jobs that our people are going into. So engineering, you absolutely need to have those skill sets that they're looking for, looking for engineering and technical skills in the military that translate. Building and construction, virtually none of our people have those skills as a result of service, but 7% of service leavers go into it. Transport and logistics, there's a whole process of people using personal credits or the CTP to get CAT CE licenses. If you've got military skills and those licenses, they transfer, but if not, lots of people do that upskilling as part of their resettlement. Defence, that's falling. If we were looking at this 15 years ago, that figure would be nearer 30%, because it was very easy for our military people to leave and join one of the defence primes. Now they're competing for us, and therefore only 5% are going in. And public service. In the last 2 years, every other government department now has a dedicated programme for service leavers to join because they recognise those skills, and that usually comes with an upskilling or a retraining program. You know, at the one end we've got HM Customs and Excise, who have an internship which you can do in your last 6 months of service. And then all the other government departments will allow you to apply for jobs while you're in your terminal leave. And therefore you can not have that break in employment, because that's recognised as key. But if we look at the right-hand side and talk about that employment, these are the companies that are actively looking. Engineering, no surprise, there's a nationwide shortage. Building and construction, again, no surprise, because 7% of our people go into it, but they're looking for more people than are making that decision. And then we've got a couple of surprises. Healthcare. One of the things that came out during COVID was that recognition. So if we were having this discussion 5 years ago, less than 50% of the service leavers going into the NHS were from Defence Medical Services. Now that's up to about 1,000 people a year, and probably about 55% of them are coming from other fields, whether it's project management, logistics, HR, through the Step Into Health program. And through that recognition, doesn't matter whether you're going into work as a paramedic, work as a uniformed services, or the back office, the health sector are recognizing that. Education, it's a surprising figure. If you've been an instructor in the military, whether that's an instructor at one of the phase 2 or phase 2 schools, at Staff College or one of the other schools, you're very well sought after. A large number of service leavers every year go into the private education sector and are seen as some of the best teachers. That's now been recognised by the Department for Education, who have various programmes to allow you to get qualified teacher status so you can enter state sector, because you need qualified teacher status to teach in the state sector. And again, transport and logistics. So there's lots of people looking for you, but it's absolutely key that you make sure that you've got the skills they're looking after, or the hard qualifications. So use that dedicated support in the CTP for the first 2 years before you leave, and 2 years after you leave, and use that networking support. Next slide, please. Again, what does that mean? 95% of service leavers will be in employment 6 months post-discharge. It can be quite daunting when you're looking to resettle and you're looking for jobs, but you can see that actually you're in good company. 91% of the service leavers rate CPP as good or excellent, so make use of the facilities on offer. Those facilities include upskilling and retraining and career support and CV support. So you get up to 35 days graduated resettlement time. There are training options that are available for you. Use your standard learning credits, your enhanced learning credits, your training grant as part of your leave to make sure that you map up any and miss any skills that you have. You can upskill and do that training while you're still in service. And why is that important? Well, the employment outcomes for service leavers are significantly better. The work we've done with the DWP means it doesn't matter whether you are age 25 or age 55, service leavers are between 10 and 15% more likely to be in a well-paid job for that age demographic if they have served in the military for 5 years or longer. You know, and that's because of those soft skills you get alongside of the hard skills. So make sure they're captured and mapped. And again, it doesn't make a difference whether you are male or female. The outcomes are the same. Statistically, more women leave to look after families, but the figures are the same for those retiring. The figures are the same for those entering back into higher education. But the figures are also the same. It's about 95% for male and females who are actively looking for a job, who are in employment at the 6 month point. So it's all to shoot for. Next slide, please. When we talk about what it is you're looking for, it's really important that you look at your drivers. You know, what are your drivers? Are you prepared to move to find the money? Is location and geography key? Are you looking for a new career, or are you looking for a first job because geography is important? So veterans typically move at least once in the first 5 years post-discharge, and typically that's within the first 2 years. That's why the CTP provides support for 2 years after you leave, and FEC provides support thereafter. Geography is important. Lots of service leavers decide they don't want to move because they want children's education to go through one stage, or they have to consider spouse and partner employment. So it's really important that you work out what it is you want to do, and then you look at the skills you need to do that. Underselling skills is a traditional problem for military personnel, particularly when you are going to an employer that doesn't understand the military. And therefore, the other angle, of course, is that you need to establish yourself. You're not just going to leave and enter a big company at a senior level just because you're in a senior level in the MOD. And both are true for veterans as well as service leavers. So you need to make sure that you sell your skills appropriately, and you also need to establish yourself if you're looking to start a new career. You'll be pleased to note that, as well as it is daunting, most service leavers who complete their upskilling typically get promoted at least once in the first 2 years, as well as moving jobs. So that job can be internally within a company. And again, it's about matching your skills to those jobs. So I think at that point, I'll hand back to Toby.
Thanks, Darren. Yeah, just to reiterate a couple of points there. I mean, it's so true. And when I joined IBM, I was able to sort of fairly quickly rattle through some of the ranks there. And I think it was really just based on the work I'd done in the military, really, and the experiences that I'd had. And also, what was really, really good was the military network. So all of the three companies that I've worked at, IBM, EY, and QA, we've all had fantastic military networks within there. And when I started those places, you don't just get like a buddy who actually helps you fit into the company, but you also get a military buddy as well, which is really, really important. And it tends to be someone of the same kind of colour as you, who kind of gets alongside you and gives you a bit of a "this is how it really is" kind of conversation. And it's really nice to do that. And we recently had an award ceremony at the Ex-Forces in Business Awards, where we had a table and we invited some of our military community as well as some externals. And it's that kind of thing really, where you actually get to spend a bit of time talking to people. And you should also look for employers that have the Employee Recognition Scheme badge, the Armed Forces Covenants Employee Recognition Scheme. So bronze, silver and gold. And that also gives you things like automatic entry to the first interview for jobs, as well as one of the things that they offer, which is really, really important. But one thing that I didn't get told really until I got out into the big wide world was about personal brand. And this is a bit of a key takeaway, I think, really, for everyone, is to think about your brand and think about what you want to be known for. You've got that chance to kind of either reinvent yourself or continue to deliver on the person that you are. But to do that, you need to think about a few different things as well. So very much think about social media now. So when we do job interviews, I pretty much always go to social media first and find out about the person, see what's on there. So obviously be a little bit careful about that. Your LinkedIn and your CV should always match. Nothing worse than sending in your CV and then they look you up on LinkedIn and find that something's not quite right, because that starts to give you questions in your mind. But also think about how your LinkedIn account, you want it to look, and that kind of ties in with your personal brand. Are you going for digital jobs? So do you want your logos and your backdrops to be a bit digital, or are you going into something in healthcare, say, or education, and you want it to look and represent that particular field? Professional qualifications, we talked about, really, really important, absolutely, but you do need to be selective in terms of what you're presenting at that time. So I have seen people before where they've gone round and done all of the professional quals, all of the organisations that you can join, and I know Darren's going to mention it later on, and you end up with so many post-nominals along the end of your name. It's crazy. And actually what I'd say is don't present yourself like that. Pick the ones that are relevant to the job that you're going for. And take the others, if they're not relevant, out as well, because it does look a little bit like you've just gone around and bounced around courses and paid some money and collected some stuff. And then I mentioned earlier as well about your network. So for me, in all of the companies I've worked for, network is absolutely vital. I mean, you'll know an awful lot of stuff when you go into these businesses, I'm sure, but having that network around you, whether it's the military network or that of your colleagues, military people, like I said earlier, generally pretty easygoing, pretty good at chatting to people, making friends, having a whatever you want to do. And so get that network up and sorted as quickly as you can, because those are the people that are going to really help you push on as well, and really help you with your careers. But I should just say there are so many opportunities out there for you. And that bit that Darren said about underselling skills, it really is. You need to go out there and really sell yourself, because actually you've got a load of fantastic skills that civvies don't have. And I know most military people are not used to shouting about those things and promoting themselves. And they always say we at job interviews instead of I. But actually, that's your opportunity when you do get to those job interviews to really sell yourself. And I'm sure that there will be opportunities out there for absolutely everybody. Next slide, please, Lisa. Thank you. So just on learning qualifications, we talked about the importance of personal development and the different reasons why I think that you should do that. So it's really, really key. Make sure that once you get out there as well, that you always continue to look for opportunities to upskill. Most organisations have their own learning and development platforms where you can actually go into and you can take all sorts of training, and it might be directly relevant to your job, or it might be something else that perhaps you're thinking of doing in addition to. You can make full use of those. Typically they're free as well, but there are also lots of other online platforms that you can use, and quite a lot of the courses around things like Coursera and LinkedIn Learning can be free as well. Definitely do consider professional memberships, depending on what job you want to go in to do. And Darren's going to speak about that in a moment, I know, about things like CIPD for HR. And also do think about these funded learning options as well. So for instance, there is a fully funded digital technical apprenticeship scheme for small to medium companies that work in the defence area. And this is through something called the 5% Club as well. So if you wanted to get a degree at level 4, level 4 or level 5, 6, or even 7, up to a master's, then you can actually do those things for free as well. And that's basically because big corporate companies who haven't used all of their apprenticeship levy give it to the 5% Club, and then the 5% Club give it back out to small to medium enterprises or small businesses. And look at other places as well for support. So obviously you get your LCAS funding, which is fantastic. You get support from the Career Transition Partnership, which is great. But there are other things that you may not be aware of, like the 5% Club. So they're online. You can go and have a look and see what they offer. And also organisations like Tech Vets as well, who very much help you with your skilling for technical careers. But there is so many more organisations out there as well. And I'm sure that the CTP or some of these other places will help you find those too. Thank you, Lisa. Over to Darren.
Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, thanks, Toby. Just picking up on that point, yeah, MOD was the first diamond member for the 5% Club, which reflects the ongoing MOD accreditation offer. All of our phase 2 training now is mapped to a civilian apprenticeship or a civilian offer qualification. And there's an ongoing process to map civilian qualifications, both to the off-call qualifications and a separate package for we're working with Scotland and the SCQF in Scotland through the My World of Work apps. If you're looking to resettle in Scotland now, then we've done about the top 25 CAP badges for going into Scotland. That's 25 top CAP badges, but that's actually 90% of the people resettling in Scotland. You'll be able to put in, I was a Royal Marine at this rank doing this, I was an engineer, RAF engineer, Navy technician, Navy whatever. You put them in and it will tell back and then help employers map. So look at that ongoing MOD accreditation offer and check back even after you've left, because of course once those skills are identified, you've got them as well. The MOD is currently going through the Pan Defence Skills Framework and moving to a skills-based organisation, which means every role in defence will have got the skills that both that they require and you pick up. And those, of course, will be able to, if you're still serving and you're just 2 years before you leave, you'll be able to have those to put onto your portfolio and leave, and you'll get them in your JPA printout. If you've left, it's worthwhile coming back through FEC or CTP to make sure that you're up to date with what skills the jobs you've done now seem to be giving you. And it's not just that we leave it to you. You know, we are working with employers to educate them on those skills and experience. There are specific programs working with the defence industry and the Defence Suppliers Forum, working with the NHS on Step Into Health, working with the automotive sector, and pretty much there's 25 of the big sectors, whether you're looking at construction, whether you're looking at cyber, where we work in them. And that's as much to look at that recognition of prior experience and learning. You know, that soft skills, that recognizing that it's not just what qualifications you've got, but what experience you've got to actually deliver them. And it's that recognition that employers are getting during COVID, that those soft skills and that experience that military people have is absolutely key. So make sure you don't just fall into the trap of listing your qualifications. You need to make sure that you put your experience and your skills into your job apps as well. Next slide, please. I'm conscious of time. So the relevance and value of memberships and making sure that you tailor it appropriately. So if you are going into the HR field, they'll expect you to be CIPD. If you're going into leadership or management, having qualifications such as CMI or ILM membership is useful. That just shows you that you've got the experience, but understand the difference between the qualification and the membership. So if you are a member of the CIPD, that will show you that you've got the experience, but you've got the fellow or chartered fellow is the qualification that shows you the level at which you're operating. So make sure during your last couple of years service or when you're leaving, you take advantage of things such as your ELC scheme to make sure you get the qualification as well as the membership. Because if you're wanting to go to a senior level or in even a middle medal in the HR field, then they'll expect you to have got some CIPD qualifications as well. In the technical space, it's very straightforward. You get level 5, 6, 7 qualifications and you can map those across. But when you're looking at memberships of professional bodies, make sure you understand the difference between the membership and the experience and the qualification that those bodies award. Understand that value of networking, especially with veterans organizations. If you approach the Microsoft Veterans Organization, they don't just talk about jobs in Microsoft, they will talk about the whole supply chain, how you can get into the cloud-based organization, how you can get into the servers, how you can get into that, because they want to grow the supply chain because they see those people as working for Microsoft in 10 or 15 years after they leave. Similarly, Jaguar Land Rover, that all of those companies like that have big veteran organizations that you can get into to approach a sector. And again, use the value of of charities like FEC, Royal British Legion, who can actually prompt you and direct you to these veteran organisations that link to a particular sector. It's done if you're going through the CTP. You can also apply through the FEC, through websites, through the services that they offer. Make sure you do that networking to help map the skills and make sure you go into the organisation at the right level. And finally, don't forget to use your ELCs. You know, that's potentially £6,000 that you can use during your resettlement or for up to 5 years after you leave to actually upskill yourself or get your existing skills codified and turned into a qualification. Next slide, please. I don't know whether we're doing this, but the key takeaways, again, Lisa, I think you'll sort of agree we've covered. Lifelong learning is key. Sell yourself realistically. Aim high. And remember, you've got the skills and experience that civilian employers are looking for. They don't often just realize because the language is different. So you need to make sure that you have got those codified. And typically,
Absolutely.
you have those skills. Yeah, Lisa? Yeah.
No, I just want to say thank you very much for your time today. I think, you know, the points you make about focusing on skills and, you know, the opportunities that are out there to upskill as well is absolutely second to none. I think civilians are very jealous of the opportunities and access that service leavers and veterans have. So it really is a fantastic resource. I also think personally that continuous learning as a message is a fantastic message to a future employer. I mean, who doesn't want to employ somebody that's hungry for learning and has got a track record of an appetite for learning? And also, I think what a good point to make is that when you're looking at a new job and looking at who you might want to work for, you know, do look at what support they give to your continuous learning and, you know, how they're going to support you to carry on with that journey, because I think it's all about that. And I think employers really are looking at retaining people, you know, and offering learning opportunities as a means of retention. And obviously, don't forget to use your Forces Employment Charity Employment Advisor to ask any questions you have around this. One unfortunately, I think that we've run out of time for any further questions, but I think we've answered a couple online, so hopefully that's all right. But if you did want to ask anything, please do drop us a line. So if we can have the next slide, we've got upcoming events, but then the final slide will give you our email address if you wanted to drop us a line and ask any other questions. We'd be delighted to follow up and help where we can. But do use all the resources that are out there. There really is a fantastic wealth. But thank you so much to both our speakers today. We've been extremely lucky to have your expertise and knowledge, and we're very grateful. But good luck, everybody, in your job seeking.
Good luck.
Good luck, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.